Hey guys, Captain Dylan Hubbard here at Hubbard's Marina, and we are ready for that live stream show. Hopefully, you're excited for a great show tonight. We've got a special live stream show lined up for you tonight. Very unique live show. So we're going a little bit off script, a little bit off kind of pattern tonight, but I think you're going to enjoy it. So we're going to do a special show kind of more focused on fisheries science and management and walk you guys through some information to try to help better answer some questions that we've been getting about how science and management works, how the process works, how you can get involved, where the numbers come from, how the numbers come about, and a little bit more about the science and management and how they bridge together to come with fisheries, all things fisheries in federal waters. So I'm excited tonight to hopefully try to illustrate some of these intricacies to you guys and hopefully answer some questions and hopefully help you guys to be more effective this coming week for the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council meeting, because we need your help. Gag grouper are in trouble. We're facing a historic time right now with some really kind of glaring issues with gag grouper and red grouper, specifically recreational data collection when it comes to gag grouper and red grouper. So we're going to first start out real quickly talking about the weather, the fishing, what's going on now, what's coming up, but we're going to compress that. Normally, a typical show, we start out talking about the weather, talking about what we're catching, showing you photos, then talking a little bit about what's going on, what's coming up, making some announcements, then we do some questions towards the end. Tonight's show, we're going to compress all of that, leave the questions off to a few minutes, then we're going to rip right into our segment on fisheries, science, and management. So as someone stated, maybe you want to take a little bit of notes, but remember, you don't have to. You can always come back and watch this later. This show lives on our YouTube and on our Facebook indefinitely, so you can always come back and watch it in the future if you want to see more about it, if you want to rewatch it, if you want to kind of go back and reference certain sections, you can do that. So first things first, want to make sure we give a shout out to our friends over at Gator Jim's Tackle. Remember, 3301 Pinellas Point Drive South in St. Pete. This show is brought to you by our friends over at Gator Jim's. Also, keep in mind, the supporters group. Want to give a shout out to all our supporters out there. It's only $4.99 a month. You get some behind the scenes info, some more connectivity. It's a great way to stay connected with us. Plus you get that supporters after show, and it's a really fun time over there in the supporters group. So big shout out to all our supporters making the show possible as well. And then finally, all the stars senders. We appreciate all the stars helping to fuel the show and keep us going. We had Craig Robinson, Christine, and Pete. We had Richard Harcourt, Chris Collins. Let's see here. We got some. Oh, there it is. Richard Harcourt, Nathan Alboom, Keith White, LaShonda Brown, Richard Harcourt, Jasmine Marie, Craig Robinson, Larry White with the big 500 stars, Jeff Reedy with 2,400 stars. Thank you, buddy. Richard Harcourt again, Richard Blazak, what's up, buddy? Scott Flynn, Richard Harcourt again, Tony Tomaston, appreciate you, Tony. Charles Carter with 500 stars. Thank you, my friend. David Pruitt with 500 stars as well. Thank you guys all so much for the support. Appreciate the shares as well. We saw a lot of people sharing the stream. Michelle Johns, thank you for the share. Terry DeNorris, Allie, appreciate the shares of the stream. Keith White, Jody Mallory, appreciate you all sharing the stream as well. So don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, don't forget to share. Now let's get into a little bit about what we're catching now, the weather, then we're going to get into the gag grouper and fisheries management stuff. So first things first, what are we catching right now? Inshore, we're definitely seeing some nice catches of these black drum. The black drum bite has been pretty good around the area. A lot of these schoolie sized black drum, we've heard on the news, they're getting pretty thick up in the bay. We're seeing them around the bridges. They're scattering out to the mangroves. Still some of those mangrove snapper around, definitely a little fewer and further between between, but they're around. A lot of the redfish action going well. Those cold weather tolerant species, redfish, trout, and sheepshead are definitely prime time, followed by those black drum. The sheepshead are thick right now. We are finding some snook. This little warm up this past week had the snook fired up, but the trout are definitely number one. Lots of trout around right now. The bite is fired up around the bridge at night, during the day around the grass flats. Good time to get out there and target a lot of those inshore species because they are definitely going well. This week coming up, we'll have those little weather windows we're going to talk about here shortly. We're on the backside of the full moon, so we still got some good flushing water, some good currents to give you a great opportunity for some of those inshore species. Near shore, we are finding a lot of these hogfish. The hogfish bites going really well for us on the 5-hour half days, the 10-hour all days, the private fishing charters. The other day, Capt Joe's 5-hour half day had 10 keeper hogfish, a keeper red grouper as well. So pretty impressive lately on the hogfish action. And we have some really good opportunities this week to get some more of those hogfish we're going to talk about as well. The 10 hours, even finding a few of them. The private charters, the big lane snapper have been pretty prolific too, mixed in with those hogfish. So we're seeing some good hogfish action, some of the nice mangrove snapper as well, you can see here. Then, of course, big fat red grouper from the 10-hour all day. This one was caught by our friend Tom, hooked by our friend Tom, assisted to the boat. Got a little rocked up, but he ended up catching it. Beautiful, beautiful big red grouper on the 10-hour. Some nice lanes and mangroves as well. All in all, fishing is going well if we get those little weather windows, and that's what it's all about this time of year, capitalizing on those little weather windows. We'll show you real quick the weather, then we're going to get into some of this information about fisheries science and management. So without further ado, let's show you a little bit about the weather. Hopping over to hubbardsmarina.com, click fishing trips, scroll down to weather links. On our weather links page, we're going to start in the 5 and 10 hour forecast area and show you a little bit about the weather. You can see here, going to be a little breezy Sunday and Monday. Today and tomorrow, it's going to calm down for us Tuesday. Looking pretty nice Tuesday, but a little chilly. Wednesday, it's going to warm up nicely, still not get too breezy, and the seas look good. I would say Wednesday is probably your better day to fish because it's going to be warmer. This wind is going to start picking up, but the seas don't pick up. That barometer hasn't moved yet, so I would say, or it hasn't dumped yet. So I would say probably Wednesday morning's half day is going to be your hot bite right now. Might get a little bumpy Wednesday near shore or deeper near shore and offshore, but Wednesday morning half day should be good. Tuesday's 10 hours should be pretty darn good. The half day trips Tuesday should be pretty darn good as well. I would say Wednesday's probably your better bet though over Tuesday. Thursday, still going to be a little chunky, might be a little bit messed up because you're going to get a cold front there Wednesday night into Thursday morning, but it's kind of a small weak front, so it's not going to really mess up our weather too much Thursday, but fishing might be a little slow right directly behind that front. It's going to be in the 50s there Tuesday, so it might be a little bit shocking to the fish. Friday looks good, a little overcast. I would say Saturday looks like the best day. 10 out of 10 Saturday as far as the forecast goes right now, because you're going to be right ahead of another front. Or a prefrontal activity Sunday, big front there Monday night into Tuesday. So this Sunday is kind of more prefrontal activity, kind of a high pressure gradient, some moisture going on. So kind of a disturbance there Sunday. Similar to those no-name storms is kind of what we're looking at there. You can see 3 inches, 2.5 inches Sunday at 7 p.m. With some winds gusting to 40. I saw today they were calling 60 gusts, 60 mile an hour gusts Sunday night. So forecast has gone down a little bit on that little prefrontal activity, no-name storm type deal that's scheduled there Sunday. But I would say, again, Saturday looks like a really good day. Friday's okay. Thursday might be okay. Wednesday looks like a pretty good morning. Tuesday looks pretty good as well. So your best day, Saturday. Your second best day, Wednesday, then Tuesday and Friday are kind of tied. Thursday would be okay as well. So that's kind of our forecast, our prediction for what we're looking for weather outlook-wise. So we talked a little bit about what we're catching. We talked a little bit about the weather. Now let's pop right into this fisheries science and management stuff. We want to dive deep tonight and give you a little look at what's going on now and how you can better be involved. So first, let's give away our first free trip of the night. We're going to do our 5-hour half day, for 2 people. 5-hour half day for 2 people. Lucky winner is, let's see here, Nikki Lissy from St. Pete. Congratulations, Nikki. You've got 5 minutes or less if you're picked as that lucky winner to text us at our office phone number right there at the bottom of the screen. If you're new to the show, you got to comment 1 time. It helps to like, or we appreciate if you like and share. It doesn't help. All you have to do is comment once. That's how you enter to win. You can comment 1,000 times or 1 time. You're still entered to win the same way. So comment once on the Hubbard's Marina Facebook stream. If you like it, if you like the stream and share it, we appreciate it. That helps us as well. So make sure you like, comment, and share the Hubbard's Marina Facebook stream. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. Trovo, Twitch, same thing. Now, first things first, Josh, let's start on the agenda link there. And we're going to show everybody the agenda, and then we'll get right into the stuff here. So first things first, let's hop over here, and we're going to start on the agenda and scroll down. So this is the agenda, the Golf Council agenda, and as you see, Monday, we are going to start with admin and budget, and not too much there. Law enforcement, not too much there. Data collection, Monday afternoon is going to be important because we're going to be talking about our new data collection programs, hopefully for the charter boats and party boats. But Tuesday is really where the information starts to really pick up for the Golf Council meeting. And this is what I want to show you Tuesday afternoon around 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. CST. That's Central Time. So this would be an hour behind us. Yeah, that'd be 2 p.m. our time. Had to think about that for a second. So I want to show you this real quick. This is our gag grouper information. So really, really interesting as we get here down towards the bottom. So this is why I wanted to dive more into this tonight and show you guys a little bit more about this, because I want to show you how crazy these numbers are. So the 2023 predicted landings were supposed to be right there about 400,000 pounds, but you can see the preliminary landings are more like 1.7 million pounds. That's not good. So the Wave 5 data came in from MREP, and look what it's showing here. The private anglers caught 1.4 million pounds of fish. Charter boats caught 162,000, and shore anglers caught 106,000 pounds of gags. Keep in mind, head boats, which is the only group that's reporting their catch. We have to report our catch. We have had to report our catch since the 80s. The head boat reporting data is only showing 8,600 pounds. That is significantly lower. So head boats, all the head boats in the Gulf caught 8,600 pounds. All the charter boats in the Gulf caught 162,000 pounds. If you add that together, that's 170,000 pounds between all the professional fishermen in the entire Gulf of Mexico. Private anglers on private boats caught 1.4 million pounds, according to these preliminary numbers. Shore anglers fishing from the piers and the seawalls caught 106,000 pounds. That's a quarter of the catch. That seems a little heinous, doesn't it? Things aren't adding up. This is what's crazy. So this federal number, the MRIP FES numbers, are 7 times higher than SRFS, which is the State Reef Fish Survey. So the Fed numbers are 7 times higher than the state numbers. Normally, they're only about 3 times higher. So 3 times higher is still a significant difference from the state numbers, but in this case, they are a total 7 times higher. And look at the intercepts. So this is really important. We're going to talk more about this here in a second and explain to you why this is so upsetting. Intercepts. There's only been 1 shore intercept. So that means when people go out there for the APIS survey, the Angler Point Intercept Survey, which we're going to explain how that works shortly, a little bit into this video. The intercept, only one occurred in that entire gag grouper season. One person was interviewed. One person said, hey, I caught a gag grouper. So one person, one survey, one instance was then extrapolated and then turned into 106,000 pounds. So one intercept, 106,000 pounds. Charter boats, there was 16 intercepts of charter boats, and that only equated to 162,000 pounds. There was only 15 intercepts from private boats, 1.4 million pounds. Something's not adding up, folks, and we have to figure it out. And hopefully they're going to give us some good news and some good information, because if they don't figure it out, remember these bars, this is where we were supposed to be, this green number. This orange number is where they are saying we are now preliminarily. So if they don't change something and they stick with this orange bar, we are about 5 times higher than we should be. There's accountability measures, or AMs, in the gag grouper fishery. You know what that means? If there isn't a fix or a solution and this number stays this orange bar, we're 5 times over the limit. So that means we are probably not going to have a gag grouper season. 4 years, 5 years, that's not good. So this is going to be an important thing that I need your help with. So tonight we're going to help empower you, hopefully educate a little bit, maybe, and maybe you might learn something, and it's going to help you to give a really good informed comment. Now, you can comment via the internet, you can comment via the website, you can comment via the webinar. We're going to talk more about that too. So stay tuned tonight. This is the next steps. They're going to review the landing estimates, hopefully make some changes. Then they're going to 2 influential APIS intercepts. So this APIS, Angler Point, I forget what the second A is. Angler Point Intercept Survey is basically what it stands for. But Angler Point Access, I think, maybe, I don't know. But these 2 influential intercepts could be skewing the numbers. So they're going to investigate that and potentially change something. Can I go back to the PIP, Josh? So they're going to investigate that and hopefully help us out and make some changes there. And if they do, then that would definitely help us with the end results, the end numbers. So that is going to be the next steps and what's going to be very, very crucial this week that we're going to learn about. Plus, this determine the overage part, this little last bullet point right here, that's going to be super important too, because the accountability measure, the payback that we have to pay back for that overage is going to be very important. If that payback is we exceeded it by 4 times, now we have to pay back that 4 times overage, that means we're not fishing for 4 years. So very, very, very important stuff. So let's get into a little bit about how these numbers came about and how you can help. So we covered that. Let's pop right into kind of a high-level overview of how fisheries science stuff works. So going back to the screen here, I'm going to try to go slowly but fast through this stuff, and we might run a little over tonight, but this is going to be cool stuff, hopefully, and I hope you guys enjoy this. So let's get going. Stock assessments. Again, this is a high-level overview of how the process works. So stock assessments basics. What a stock assessment is not. Stock assessment is not interviewing people about what they caught or measuring fish. A lot of people think, I hear this all the time, and it drives me crazy. Oh, I saw the guy at the boat ramp, and I told him we caught 100 fish because I didn't want him to think that there weren't any fish out there. Wrong. You screwed up. You caused a problem. That might be one of the reasons we're having this intercept problem. Another thing I hear all the time, well, I saw the guy at the boat ramp, and I didn't want to tell him that I caught a bunch of fish because then the season got closed, so I told him we didn't catch anything. Wrong. Then you're showing that there's not a lot of fish out there. You got to be as truthful as possible. Truth in the surveys help. And a lot of people say, I don't want to talk to the guy at the boat ramp because he's going to skew my information. No, that is just a state employee in many cases. Sometimes it's a federal employee, but most of the time it's a state person, a biologist who cares, who wants to help preserve the fishery. It is very important to talk to those people and be as truthful as possible. The more people that talk to those people at the boat ramp and give the people with the clipboard information, the more information they have. So the harder, if you believe they're skewing information, If you give them more information, it's harder to skew the data points. If you have a small sample size, the data can be skewed very, very easily. If you have a large sample size, you get a lot of people talking to you, it's harder to skew that information. So more information, more truthful information is very important. Also, a stock assessment is not counting fish. A stock assessment is all the activities done to determine the condition of the stock. Basically, it's a temperature of where that stock biomass is. They use modeling, and models are super, super complex when it comes to stock assessments. It's very, very, very complex. We're going to get into that a little bit here. So this is a kind of a simplified example, those old word problems from school, but let's skip through that because it's a little too basic, but it starts really basic and it shows you how complicated a stock assessment can be. And I am not a mathematician, so I'm not going to walk through these slides perfectly because, again, I'm not a mathematician, but it shows you basically how a stock assessment process is started very simply by trying to do a simple example from how many catfish are stocked in a pond. And you basically do how many catfish or how many fish are at the beginning of the year, how many fish they think they put into the pond minus the catch, and then that gives you the fish at the start of year 2. But that doesn't come into account for a lot of different things like natural mortality, catchability, catch per unit of effort. So I'm going to scroll down and show you as they add more variables, how much more complicated the process or the model gets. And this is still a very simplified model, and I have no idea what's going on at this point. I'm lost, and I assume many people are, unless you're a math whiz, which there are a lot of math whizzes out there, but that's not me. So this is, again, still a very simplified 1 or 2 variables into it. And look at that. It's a pretty complicated model. Now, as you get into the real modeling, this is a very basic look at maybe one of the pages, and I don't know if I can make this any bigger. I can. Look at that. Oh, too big. I lost it. I know it's further down here. So this is a simplified look at some of the information. The MRIP modeling, how they come up with the federal numbers, is like 125 pages of formulas like the one above my head. It is absolutely asinine how complex the modeling is. And the reason it's so complex is they're having to survey and basically guesstimate and extrapolate information because there's not a fully known number. The universe of anglers isn't well defined. So they're essentially kind of estimating how many people are out there. They're essentially estimating how the CPUE, or catch per unit of effort, is affecting the landings. Then they're essentially estimating the landings. They're estimating the discards. Everything about the private recreational landings and the numbers are estimated. Now, they're estimated through really, really complex modeling, and it's peer-reviewed, and there's a lot of checks and balances, but ultimately, because of that estimation, things can get skewed. And when the sample size is only 32 intercepts, like I showed you before, that's where we run into problems like we have with the gag grouper. So there's a bunch of different methods to data modeling and stock assessments. And definitely as you go down, they get more detailed outputs, but the complexity of the model increases exponentially and it has more data needs. So the best form, in my opinion, of a stock assessment is that one right above my head, the multi-species and ecosystem stock assessment. That would be, a lot of people talk about like red snapper. Well, we see more red snapper, but now we don't have grouper. And the idea is as red snapper grow in size, there's more red snapper out there, they might displace some grouper species. Or, hey, we have more red snapper, we also have more lane snapper. Maybe they're spawning together, maybe because there's more red snapper depressing the number of red grouper and gag grouper, maybe there's more lane snapper because there's no grouper eating them. So basically, this multi-species and ecosystem modeling approach wouldn't just look at one species with tunnel vision. It would look at what happens when you manage this species. What does it do to impact the rest of the food web and the rest of the Gulf of Mexico ecosystem? So this multi-species and ecosystem approach is kind of the gold standard. But as I said, as you go down this list, the model complexity exponentially increases, the output detail increases, and the quality increases, but the data needs are exponentially higher. And that's why we're more up here. Most of our species are using data limited models. A lot of our species are data limited, or data poor, as they say. Data limited is a more PC way to say they're data poor, meaning we don't know shit. Stage-based models are where some species are, like red snapper, are getting a lot more information. Great American red snapper count just pumped a ton of information into the system. So fish that we know more about can have more complex modeling. But as we saw just recently, they spent 3 years and 270 plus people working on a red snapper research track stock assessment model, and they just threw the whole thing away because the third-party peer reviewers came in and said, we don't like the way you approach this. There was too much information that was kind of guesstimated, so we're going to throw this away. So the model got too complex, there was too many variables, and it didn't pass the third-party peer review. So we'll get more into that. So high-level overview. So let's not get too far into the weeds just yet. So practical definition of a stock assessment, we're going to move through that. So that was our first look at a high-level overview of the fisheries science part of it. Now, from there, let's get into our next little set of slides here, which is a fisheries independent look. And this is, remember, in order to have a good look at the fishery, you have to have a few things: fisheries independent data, fishery independent data collection, and fishery dependent data collection. Fisheries independent data collection is, again, independent of fishermen. It's scientists out there collecting information, whether that's a bottom long line, whether that's a surface trawl, whether that's a CMAP survey, a camera study. These are all scientists out there collecting information. Sometimes they collect it with the help of fishermen, but it's scientific processes. They tell fishermen where to fish. They do very complex modeling, stratified random sampling. This is fisheries independent. This is kind of the gold standard. These are done the same way and the same process over a longer period. So these give us really good kind of ground truthing temperature gauges, because the modeling approach, the way they approach collecting the data doesn't change, and the time length of the approach is very long. So they can count on that information remaining kind of the same. Fisheries dependent is the easiest to collect. They have the most of, because they depend on fishermen. We're already going out there. They can just ask us. And so fisheries dependent information, there's a lot more of it. It's a lot easier to collect. It's a lot cheaper to collect. But the problem with fisheries dependent fishing, the fisheries dependent data, is fishermen are smart. Well, kind of. What I mean by that is fishermen change their fishing practices, right? If you go out there and you're not catching fish, what do? You change your tackle, you change the area. So you're constantly changing the way you fish to increase your catch per unit of effort. Your catch per unit of effort is a very important piece of information. And so when you're constantly changing the approach that you're using, your technique to increase your catch per unit of effort, that data is a lot harder to use to gauge the health of the stock. Whereas fisheries independent data collection never changes their technique or their approach. So they can measure the CPUE, or catch per unit of effort, more easily from fisheries independent science. Fisheries dependent science gives you landings, gives you discards, gives you a lot of information, but you can't measure the CPUE well, or catch per unit of effort. And in order to measure the health of a stock, you need to know how many people are going fishing, the universe of anglers. You need to know what they're catching and keeping, what they're catching and discarding, and their catch per unit of effort. How many trips do they make? That is all very important information. If you have all that information, then you can really, really get all the fisheries dependent data you need, and you can manage that fishery well. Those are the components of fisheries dependent science that you really need. How many anglers are going fishing? How many trips are they making? What are they catching and keeping? What are they catching and releasing? What's their catch per unit of effort? For the private recreational sector, they don't have any of that information. If you go to charter boats and party boats, there's a moratorium on our permits. There's only like 1,300 charter boats and party boats in the entire Gulf of Mexico. It's a defined universe. So how many people are fishing? The universe of anglers is well defined. That's why there's better data from charter boats and party boats. Now, the other piece is how many trips are we making? Our party boats have to report every single trip. So that data is pretty well available, and it helps to get at the information for charter boats and party boats. Our charter boats are under a charter boat survey through MREP, and it's a smaller universe, defined universe of anglers, so it's a little bit better kind of controlled, I guess you could say is a bad word, but it's a little bit better surveyed. So the universe of anglers and how many trips we're doing is a little bit better attained. Plus, what we're catching and keeping and what we're catching and releasing is much easier to define and to survey because we're public boats. Anybody can get on our boats. So the state actually has a very, very expansive program in which they pay to put scientists on our boat. So if you go off fishing with us on the party boat, you'll sometimes run into FWC people, biologists, not enforcement, but scientists out there collecting information, measuring fish, tagging and releasing fish. Those are called port observers. So they go fishing with us pretty regularly, and they take surveys, and that survey information is then extrapolated to what we catch. So we take the scientists fishing quite often. So what we catch and keep, what we catch and release is pretty well defined and there's a lot of good information there. Our catch per unit of effort is then pretty easy to get to because they have a pretty good estimate of what we're catching and releasing, what we're catching and keeping. They know how many anglers are fishing. They have a pretty good idea of how many trips we have. Plus, their catch per unit of effort comes from all that information put together. So from charter boats and party boats, they have a pretty good handle on what we're catching, our numbers, our landings. Commercially, perfect estimate. Perfect information because they know exactly how many commercial boats are going. They have to hail out before they leave. They have to do a 3-hour notification before they come in. They have to come into an approved landing location where officers can intercept them. They have vessel monitoring systems that monitor the boats 24/7. They have dealer reports, so every ounce of fish that comes off that boat has to then be checked by a seafood dealer, and then trip tickets. So there's multiple checks and balances by third parties that make sure all those fish are accounted for. So commercially, almost no question out what's being caught, what's being kept, how many are fishing, how many trips are they doing, what's their catch per unit of effort. There's no guessing. Pretty much exactly real-time information. So commercially, almost everything perfectly there is no estimating. It's like census level, trip level reporting. Charter boats and party boats, they have a pretty good idea. Private recreational anglers are not even on the map because of what we've talked about here. They don't know how many trips they're making. They don't know how many people are fishing. They don't know what they're catching and keeping, and they don't know what they're catching and discarding. They really don't know what the CPUE is. They're using all that information we talked about just a second ago, that high-level overview of stock assessment modeling, to essentially guess at what's being caught and kept. And that's what's causing these problems. So let's get into fisheries independent data and walk a little bit more into this so you guys get a better idea of how they are guessing. So let's go into fisheries independent data collection. So this is some of the stuff that's going on at fisheries independent data collection. They go out there and they troll some nets, they measure an area, they do stratified random sampling with camera studies, they do gonad testing to see when fish become sexually mature and able to reproduce. They produce age and growth tables, really, really cool information with the camera studies. They're actually now using artificial intelligence to analyze this camera information. One of the big things that cameras do, we'll show you as we get down there, is they collect a lot of video offshore, but it takes years for someone to sit there and interpret a portion of that data. Whereas now they're trying to develop AI to actually interpret that video data in real time. So when these big research vessels, look at all these research vessels, oh look, there's a Florida fisherman, because we actually did a fisheries independent trip with them. So they use fishing boats like ours, and they use their own research vessels to go out and drop cameras and do these fisheries independent studies. So it's very, very interesting on how they collect some of this fisheries independent study. This is a very cool example, population versus sample. A population is the entire group about which information is desired. So that's all the fishermen. A sample is a representative portion or part of the population. Sampling public opinion is like sampling soup. One spoonful can be reflective of the taste of the whole pot if the soup is well stirred. So look at that. These are a very simplified example. If it's like tomato bisque soup that's very well stirred and pureed up, one spoonful is going to give you a representative sample of the entire pot. Because one spoonful, the flavor is not going to change. One spoonful or the whole bowl, the flavor is going to be pretty consistent, right? But then if you have like a stew that's not blended together, you might get one bite that has a piece of chicken. You might get another bite that just has noodles. You might get one bite that has a couple carrots in it. Every spoonful is going to change the taste. It's not a representative sample with each spoon. So you need a bigger sample size to get representative samples. So that's a very simplified kind of illustration of the problem we have is fishermen are not tomato soup. Fishermen are more like a stew. Every fisherman fishes a different way. We have different sized boats. We fish different depths. So you need a large sample size to get a representative sample of the entire population. Let's see here. Life cycles. They do a lot of fisheries independent, really focuses on life cycles. So like a gray snapper with an AY is a mangrove snapper. So they develop this life cycle of gray snapper or mangrove snapper, which they start offshore in deep water as adults. They spawn, they produce their little baby eggs, phytoplankton, which get pushed inshore. And then the babies grow up in the mangroves. Once they're about 8 to 10 inches, they start to reach sexual maturity. They swim out of the bays to the seagrass and then eventually to the nearshore artificial structure. And as they get bigger, they swim offshore, and then they spawn. This is a life cycle. This is what fisheries independent data really helps to collect and kind of ascertain. So again, the key attributes of fisheries independent monitoring or FIM surveys is they have broad temporal and spatial coverage, meaning they have a very large time frame and they cover a large area across the geographic area, spatial coverage, time length is temporal coverage. And they're long term. So like the camera studies have been going on since the 80s. The bottom long line index started in like 1986. So they use statistical sampling designs that stay consistent over time. And that's what makes fisheries independent science so good, but also so costly because these are scientists going out there and doing very complicated processes. You can see here, this is, I think, Sarasota Bay or Charlotte Harbor. I think this is Charlotte Harbor. Yeah. But you can see how they break it up above my head. So this is a normal satellite view. Then they stratify it into a couple different areas, a couple different estuaries. Then they stratified random sample those areas by creating grids and using computer modeling to help discern where they're going to sample from day to day. So here's inshore sampling intensity. So this is just a very quick overview of some intensity or heat maps of samples that are collected. You can see inshore-wise, it's very easy to do a lot of testing and sampling, and the sample size is extremely high because it's easy to access these areas and sites. Offshore sampling and habitat mapping, you can see a lot of sites have been satellite mapped or mapped with LiDAR and sonar, and they're basically creating a habitat portfolio to help them better stratify random sample the area through camera surveys. So this is the Refish Camera Survey, GFisher. This is actually kind of new because they've basically created a way to compile all the camera surveys. So all these little dots above my head are different camera survey sites that they've dropped cameras down and counted fish on those cameras. And again, camera surveys are awesome. They give us a lot of good information about the health of the stock, but right now they take years to process. So a lot of times we're 2, 3, 4 years behind. That's the science is lagging behind what we see on the water. We might see a fishery doing really well and all the fishermen are like, there's tons of these fish out there, and science are like, well, maybe we're trying to catch up. And well, that's a lot to do with the time lag of some of these fisheries independent studies. But now with artificial intelligence and some of the big leaps and bounds they're making, that could actually help improve and shorten that time lag, which is very exciting information. So data collection definitely helps through all these sites. They compile all this data and they input the data from the fisheries independent science into the stock assessment. So again, fisheries independent science, fisheries dependent science, both of those scientific approaches are used to input into that complicated stock assessment model. They're starting to model some impacts from red tide, some cold weather events. They're able to kind of model some of these habitat impacts and how they affect our fisheries. Also, species distribution has species shift north, like snook are moving further north along Florida's west coast. We see yellowtail snapper doing the same thing. So they're starting to look at some of that species shift. Also, age composition is hugely important to stock assessments, meaning at this size, a fish is how many years old. At this size, how many years old. At this size, how many years old. And what's the fecundity of the fish is super important, meaning if a fish is this big, it might be sexually mature, and it might be able to reproduce, but its fecundity might be low. And that means fecundity is how many eggs can it produce. Like red snapper, for example, a huge red snapper is very fecund. It can produce millions of eggs. So that 30-pound red snapper that you catch and kill, you might have killed 6 million future red snapper. Whereas if you catch and kill a 16-inch red snapper, it's not as fecund. You're not removing as many future red snapper because it's smaller. It doesn't have the reproductive ability of that larger fish. So larger fish are very important to make sure that they get back down to bottom. If you catch one out of season, you got to get back in the water quickly. You got to use that descending device because we want those bigger fish to survive because they're more fecund, they're more they're higher reproductivity potential. So that's a lot of what fisheries independent science can talk about. Oh, this is just what I just talked about. One 24-inch female red snapper will produce as many eggs as many 17-inch females. So just what's that? 7 inches bigger is exponentially more eggs can be produced. So super important. They do diet studies, which is pretty wild. They basically will expel what's in the stomach of one of their sampled fish, and they take this soup and they're able to use magnifying glasses and look at jaw bones and different parts of these fish and discern what that fish has been eating, which is pretty incredible. Some of what they look at and how small it is, it's really amazing that they're able to kind of figure out some of that information. And here's some of the surveys and historical coverage. You can see how much information is being collected off the coast of Florida. They definitely do a really good job in Florida, spending a lot of money collecting information. So consistent, adaptive, integrative, and innovative. Definitely really, really cool stuff, fisheries independent science-wise. So that was one part of it, fisheries independent science. Now we're going to get into a little bit more about fisheries dependent. Is it time to give away another trip, Josh? All right, so we did a 5-hour. Let's do the Hubbard's Marina swag pack giveaway. Remember, if you're a swag pack winner, you have to send us your t-shirt size along with it as well. So let's see who won. Stan Meeky, congratulations. Another local, Tampa. Congratulations, Stan. Shoot us a text message to that phone number right here with your full home address and your t-shirt size, and we'll get you out that swag pack. All right, so let's get into our next presentation here real quick. This one is about MSA. So this is really important. Magnuson-Stevens Act is what governs our fishery management process and really what causes a lot of problems sometimes. So let's quickly go through this. This could be a 2 or 3 hour discussion, so kind of difficult to go through the whole thing real quick, but I'll do the best I can. So the Magnuson-Stevens Act was created back in 1976. The House and Senate worked through it with the committees and legislative process, and they made this bill. And it's the expansion of the U.S. water. It's basically started from trying to keep foreign fishing fleets out of our waters. That was the reason it started, the Magnuson-Stevens Act. And so it's 1976 is when it started. It was originally called the Fishery Conservation and Management Act of 1976. Then it became MSA over time. The Magnuson-Stevens Act named for the people that kind of the I think it was senators, Don Magnuson. I forget the names, but it's named after the people who kind of got the thing off the ground. But basically what it did is it created a conservation zone, and it established exclusive fishery management authority over the Gulf and the fishery conservation zone. So what was happening is foreign fleets were coming in the Gulf and fishing our waters. Foreign fleets were fishing off of California. The Russians and the Japanese were fishing off California and Washington and Alaska. We had foreign fleets in the Northeast fishing for our salmon and tuna. So they wanted to get these foreign fishing fleets out of our coastal U.S. waters, and they did that by creating MSA. It banned foreign fishing. It established national standards. It created regional fishery management councils. So 1976, the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council was created. 8 regional fishery management councils. And it established procedures for how councils are to create FMPs, or fishery management plans. It introduced the idea of optimum yield, which means they must manage the fishery to allow us to take the most amount of fish possible while keeping the fishery healthy. It also created a process for the Secretary of Commerce to implement council-passed fishery management plans. And it established what actions are prohibited. Now, it's been reauthorized twice. Reauthorization happened first in 1996. The second one was in 2006, 2007. And these reauthorizations added more rules and really kind of made it a little bit more intricate and difficult. So basically, a big thing that Magnuson does is it governs the way that we're allowed to kind of move forward. So it added in 1996, I believe, one of the things, no, not 1996. In 2006, the reauthorization in 2006, 2007, it added the ACL. So this one's the Reauthorization Act of 2006. It prohibited council from setting harvest levels above what's recommended by the Council's Science and Statistical Committee. It required annual catch limits. It required accountability measures, which we talked about earlier. The accountability measure in gag grouper is going to screw us hard. And it was added as a part of MSA in 2006, 2007, in that most recent authorization. And it established guidelines for the development of limited access privilege programs. A LAP, a limited access privilege program, is what an IFQ is. So the IFQ program is a limited access privilege program, or a LAP. And that was introduced in 2006, 2007, and established in the Gulf in 2009. It also included new recreational specific measures. So one of the problems that MSA has in general is it was a very, very focused on foreign fishing fleets and commercial fishing fleets, because remember, back in 1976, there wasn't a bunch of recreational fishermen. The private recreational fleet is expanded exponentially and grown exponentially over time. As boats became more readily available, outboard engine technology increased. Yamaha does a really great job getting people out there. So more people on the water, more private recreational anglers, more stakeholder conflict, and it has caused MSA to cause a little bit more problems, because MSA had to modernize a little bit and kind of account for some of those recreational fishery issues that MSA doesn't do a great job with, because it was designed for the commercial fishery, and it was designed to keep foreign fleets out of our waters. So over time, these reauthorizations have added some environmental protections. 2006, 2007 reauthorization was very conservative, adding a bunch of things that really made fishery management be more conservative, with the accountability measures, the ACLs being mandatory, and establishing an ACL for every species, or annual catch limit is what an ACL is. And it also said the council had to follow what the SSC said. In the past, the SSC, or Science and Statistical Committee for the council, which we're going to get into and explain here in a minute, used to be able to set a catch level, and if the council didn't like it, they could just ignore it and do whatever they want. Now they have to follow the recommendation from the SSC, which makes the SSC a little bit more powerful and makes the council council process a little bit more tricky. That was a very quick explanation of what MSA is, and I would like to talk more about it, but I definitely want to try to finish this show in somewhat of a timely fashion. We are going to run a little over tonight, but not too much. So, talked a little bit about fisheries independent science. Now let's talk about some fisheries dependent science, MRIP. MRIP is what's causing problems in our gag grouper fisheries. So this one's a little bit more important. So this is the marine fisheries. This one's Marine Recreational Information Program, MRIP. Basically, it's a little bit of a complicated process on how they get recreational catch and how they can get to what recreational catch is. So it's a state, regional, and federal partnership that develops, improves, and implements a national network of recreational fishing surveys to estimate total recreational catch. So it's a very complicated process, and you can see some of the data collection programs across the regions. There are a lot of them, and they have to all work together. So that's a very heavy data-rich page explaining some of the crazy surveys, crazy number of surveys across the United States and Southeast region. Data collection programs are definitely vast and a little bit changing through the regions. Keep in mind, MRIP, the Marine Recreational Information Program, is nationwide. So these numbers, a lot of people are like, where do they come up with these numbers? How are they doing this? The Gulf Council sucks. The Gulf Council has nothing to do with these numbers. A lot of the Gulf Council folks are just as angry, if not more angry, than you and I are about these gag grouper numbers. These numbers are coming from MRIP, coming from Washington, D.C. This is a national program. NOAA's Office of Science and Technology, NOAA OST, is where MRIP is housed and where this information, the numbers, are coming from. So recreational catch information, MRIP, is added to the commercial catch information, is added to the biological information from the fisheries independent science, and is added to direct observations of fish stocks. All that information is then added together to stock assessments. Stock assessments then precipitate management actions. So this is how you get recreational information, is through MRIP. So it's an estimate range. They have a lower limit and an upper limit of that estimate range. And there's the point estimate. So they try to give you a best estimate, is basically the way they do it. So they go into interpreting an estimate. So they publish the precision of each estimate as an indicator of its quality. So the higher percent standard error, or PSE, the more variation in the data. So the higher the percent standard error, or PSE, the more variation in survey data. So higher PSE means a greater variation in survey data. So let's go back over to the gag grouper presentation, because I want to show you something real quick. So higher PSE means greater variation in survey data. So let's pop back over to this slide and show you guys, for gag groupers, what was the PSE numbers? So the shore-based PSE, or percent standard error, 98%. It does not get any higher. So there's a 42% chance that this is an error as well. There's a 98% chance that these numbers are in error. Little unacceptable for PSE numbers in my mind to manage our fishery with. So just wanted to connect those dots back again. All right, so let's get back into MRIP here and show you guys a little bit more about this. So from a sample to an estimate. So basically they talk to anglers, state field interviewers, state marine resource agencies, regional fishery information networks, Gulf States Fisheries, NOAA Fisheries, regional fisheries office and science centers. They all work together to get all that information out to customers and stakeholders. So there's a common potential source of error in MRIP. Small sample sizes, large variation in observations, or extreme observations. So if they talk to one person and they said, well, I caught 1 billion grouper today. Or they talk to someone and says, hey, I caught no grouper today. There's a large variation there. If a 42-foot Freeman comes to the boat ramp with 6 people on it that went 120 miles today, they could have some really big gag grouper, and they could have a lot of them. If the next boat that pulls up is a 17-foot skiff that went out fishing at the Skyway, they didn't have very many gag grouper. That's a large variation. and it's a very small sample size. It's only 2 people. So that can really skew the information. So continuous survey improvement process, that is the good news here, is they are really spending a lot of time, energy, and money and tax dollars to try to improve the process. One of the biggest improvements to the process that they're doing now is trying to increase the number of samples and the surveys that are done, which will severely help because 32 intercepts is way too few. So as they continue to spend time and money to improve MREP FES, the better the data output will be. More data input is going to improve data output. They have to calibrate some of the surveys and some of the information, which means they take an estimate that they estimated and then calibrate it to another estimate. So it gets really confusing, and they have to calibrate surveys because we have different surveys giving different information. So you have MREP FES in the Gulf, you have all the state surveys, you have the Gulf state surveys, you have all these different people collecting data, and they all have to be the same denomination, right? If you go to Canada, they have a different dollar than we do. You can't just use US dollars. It's not a one-to-one transfer, right? The currency exchange, there's a calibration there. And the same thing happens in these surveys. They have all these surveys collecting all this data collection, so they have to calibrate all those surveys back to MREP numbers. So they take all these good surveys and then they calibrate them to MREP, which we have a lot of questions about, right? So it's very, very complicated. So just some of the challenges come into place with the competing needs of multiple stock assessments in multiple different regions, compatibility and comparability across different data collection programs like the state surveys, and transitioning to newer surveys. They're constantly trying to improve MREP, which creates more of a challenge because as they improve it, they have to change things. And as they continue to change things, it can create a bigger possibility for more unknown problems or a higher PSE or percent standard error. So they are currently working on a pilot study to hopefully improve MREP significantly, and that should be done and completed by like 2026. So nothing happens fast in the federal government. So they are doing a lot of research. They are spending a lot of time, energy, and money, but we're stuck in this problem right now, and we're staring down the barrel of a huge problem with MREP causing an overage in our gag grouper fishery to the tune of like 5 times, which is a lot of overage and can create a lot of challenges for us. So hopefully we're going to come up with some good answers at this Gulf Council meeting to help us kind of through this gag grouper problem. All right, let's get into our next thing here real quick, and then we'll do another giveaway. All right, so we talked about MREP. We're going to rip through the next couple ones of these so we can get going a little bit faster because it's taking a little longer than I thought it would, but a lot of good information. And again, hopefully you guys are entertained and enjoying this. I hear you, Josh, and I agree. All right, so let's start with CDAR. So we talked about stock assessments, right? Stock assessments happen through the CDAR process. So a lot of people are like, well, they come up with these stock assessments and they don't include us. It's not transparent. The CDAR process is 100% transparent. That's what makes it so slow. So these stock assessments take a really long time because the CDAR process is something that is very transparent, and also they're burdened down because they have to do stock assessments for the South Atlantic and for the Gulf, and they are managing the Caribbean as well. So the Southeast region is the Gulf, the South Atlantic, and the Caribbean. So from North Carolina to the Keys, from the Keys to Brownsville, Texas, and then also the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. So there's a lot of stock assessment requirements, a lot of needs, and a lot of stretching of the folks. So definitely creates a lot of challenge. Then you have the states, Atlantic States Fishery Management. I don't know. The states, you have the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council, and then Gulf States Fishery Management Council. So there's a lot of different jurisdictional bodies that are involved in the CDAR process. And basically the CDAR process, or Southeast Data Assessment Review, is what CDAR stands for, is what works together to provide the stock assessments and how they are worked out and kind of worked through. So it improves species priority. It basically controls the priority of what stock assessments are going to be coming up next, and they work through trying to optimize and make the stock assessment timelines as efficient as possible by trying to limit the needs on the scientists and overburden the scientists. So they're very transparent. As I mentioned before, all workshops and webinars are open to the public through their website. The CDAR website is not the greatest to navigate, but they have a good website, and you can pay attention to what's coming up, what's going on, and you can always pop into any meeting at any time. The documents are all publicly available on their website as well. If you have questions, you can always call, and they will connect you with someone who's more than happy to talk to you. Often they don't get a lot of phone calls, so when they get you on the phone, they want to explain everything, and sometimes you have to cut them short because they want to try to explain everything because they want it to be as transparent as possible. So all assessment input and data is available to the public, and there's multiple opportunities for public comment through the stock assessment process. CDAR is made up by federal and state agencies and universities and scientists. There's federal and state analysts. There's a ton of fishermen opportunities. So you as a fisherman or fisherwoman can actually be involved in a stock assessment if you want. They ask for fishermen's involvement, and your job is to sit there and say, nope, you're wrong. Nope, I like this. Nope, I don't like this. It's pretty entertaining. But it is a little time consuming. So if you don't have time to actually be actively involved, you can just pop in and out of the webinar, which sometimes I try to do as well, especially for stock assessments I'm really interested in. So a lot of participants. These are just some of the participants. The CDAR is ran by a steering committee made up of the different council chairs and executive director of the different councils, the Caribbean, South Atlantic, and Gulf councils. The Southeast Regional Office, which is in St. Pete, the regional administrator, the commission executive directors of the Gulf States and Atlantic States Fishery Commission, the Science Center, the Southeast Fishery Science Center, which is in Miami. This is SEFSC, Southeast Fishery Science Center. It's in Miami. Highly Migratory Species is HMS. And then FWC, we all know what FWC is. The steering committee approves policies and decides the priority and schedule of stock assessments, and also the budget and human resources. So they do all this to basically go through these research track and benchmark assessments and try to give us information about fisheries and biomasses and different things. But the problem that is constantly being balanced is whether they want to be really transparent and thorough, but if they're really transparent and thorough, they're not timely. If they're transparent and timely, they're not going to be as thorough. If they're timely and thorough, they're not going to be as transparent. So this is kind of the challenge here. You got to pick two. You can't pick three. It can't be transparent, timely, and thorough. And right now, they're trying to be transparent and thorough, which makes them not timely. But they're trying to be more timely, which makes them either less thorough or less transparent. So this is the constant kind of struggle of the stock assessment and CDAR process. And right now, like I said, they're very transparent and very thorough, which is not timely. That's why right now for GAG Grouper, the terminal year of GAG Grouper last assessment is 2019. So all of the management that we're seeing for GAG Grouper is based off data in 2019. We're in 2024, guys. That's 5 years ago. That's because the process is transparent and thorough, but not timely. So they haven't done a stock assessment on GAG Grouper since, again, the terminal year was 2019. Now, it completed in like 2021, so that stock assessment isn't that old, but they use data from 2019 because remember what I said earlier, that data takes a long time to interpret and to actually be ready for a stock assessment to get plugged in. So the most recent stock assessment for GAGs was ended in 2021. It's using data from 2019, and we're managing it in 2024. That is a big problem that they're trying to work to improve. So CDAR process works by starting with a data assessment. There's a data stage, data workshop, and then once they get through the data stage, they start the assessment process. Then there's an assessment review, and they review the data and assessment stages, and then they go through peer review. So data, assessment, review. Data, assessment, review. And that's how it works. And in the review, there's third-party peer reviewers. So a lot of people are like, why can't I give my information on an app? Why can't it be their cell phone app and I can just tell them what I caught today? That would be nice, but that wouldn't pass a third-party peer review, and they would throw it out of the stock assessment. So your data would be useless. So all that work you did on your little cell phone app to tell them what you caught and kept, what you caught and kept, and what you caught and threw away wouldn't help. It would all get thrown away because it wouldn't pass the third-party peer review. Then once the stock assessment happens and it works through the CDAR process, it goes to the SSC. Once the SSC has it, the SSC, or Science and Statistical Committee, the SSC, reviews that stock assessment from CDAR and then starts to give advice in setting the ABC, the allowable biological catch. They transmit that to the council. So again, stock assessments, how it works: fisheries independent science, fisheries dependent science, plugged in, really complicated modeling, goes through the CDAR process. That information is then given to the SSC. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the SSC, then how the SSC goes into the council process and how you can get involved. But first, let's find out who won a 10-hour all-day. 10-hour all-day for 2 guests. David Munoz from Lakeland, Florida. Congratulations, 10-hour all day for 2 guests. Congratulations, my friend David and Willie. Hope to see you guys very soon. Remember to text us your full home address within 5 minutes to let us know you're watching live. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the SSC, Science and Statistical Committee, and we'll get into that right now. So, all about the Science and Statistical Committee. They advise the council on technical and scientific aspects of the fishery. They review the stock assessments through the CDAR process and the interim analysis, and they provide recommendations on stock status, and they make recommendations on the OFL, which is the overfishing limit, and the ABC. So, that's what they do. They are very smart people. The SSC is made up of very, very intelligent people, scientists, and most of their conversations really, really struggle to follow. They are exceptionally smart people. They are appointed by the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council, and they are made up of a chair, vice chair, special SSCs, and special subcommittees of the SSC. And they are making recommendations by consensus, and they vote on different measures. And they are managed by and governed by the national standards. You can see the Florida fishermen in that photo. That's me right there, actually. And that's us doing a mangrove snapper assessment, fisheries independent data collection, back when I was much younger. So the MSA, Magnuson-Stevens Act, is what governs the whole process, I said before. So the SSC develops recommendations for the OFL and the ABC. So this is really important here. This is the whole process. Science gives us the overfishing limit. That's the high level. So let's use easy math. Let's say they say the OFL is 100 fish. Then they buffer that down. The SSC says, well, there's 100 fish, but there's some high PSCs or standard errors, percent standard errors. There's some uncertainty in the science. So we're going to buffer your OFL down to an ABC, or allowable biological catch. So that OFL gets buffered down a little bit. So those 100 fish, let's put a 20% buffer on them. Let's call the ABC 80 fish. Now the council gets that ABC. They can set their ACL, or allowable catch limit. The management now kicks in. They can set that catch limit right at the ABC, and they're really confident we can manage really well. We're going to set our ABC, or our ACL, equal to the ABC. No buffer for management uncertainty, which is very rare. Most of the time, there's a little buffer between the ACL, or allowable catch limit, and the ABC. So your 100 pounds OFL gets buffered down for scientific uncertainty to the ABC. So now let's say it's 20%. Let's say our ABC is 80%. Now the council looks at that and says, well, we're not 100% sure we're going to be able to manage this to the number. We're going to be a little bit more conservative. We're going to set a little buffer, maybe 10%, which is pretty common. So now you have that 100 pounds is buffered down for scientific uncertainty to the ABC. It's 80 pounds. Now it's buffered down another 10%. Now we're going to call it 70 pounds for the ACL. Then the council can also set an ACT, which is an allowable catch target, which is again buffered down for management uncertainty. So they can set another buffer in there, which they do this for red snapper. Our ACT is buffered down by 9% for our federal for-hire fleet. So we're essentially leaving 30-40% of the fish in the water because of management and scientific uncertainty. And we can reduce those certain uncertainties and reduce the buffers by electronic daily reporting. Something we work towards in the charter fleet and headboat fleet. It would be very hard to do in the recreational fleet because there's too many people and it's very expensive. It was a $19 million program for the 1,300 charter boats in the Gulf, and that was only 3 years, $19 million. And they just shot it all up and threw it away after years of work. To essentially, what it would do is it would remove the management buffer immediately, because there is no management uncertainty anymore because real-time electronic reporting. And then over time, it would reduce the scientific uncertainty. So now you're increasing 30-40% your catch limits. Pretty impressive. Reducing uncertainty allows more fish to be harvested. MSA dictates how that all works, and they evaluate, the SSC evaluates stock status, whether the fish is overfished, undergoing overfishing, or rebuilding. So they look at the stock assessment information, and the SSC is the group that determines, based on all that scientific information, what's happening to the stock. Then they tell the council, and then the council has to manage on it based on MSA, or the Magnuson-Stevens Act we talked about earlier. There's different examples of the SSC reviews, and they can get pretty complicated. But long story short, the big thing that you need to remember is the SSC is the bridge from the science to the management, because they take all the science, they interpret what's going on, and then they tell the council, hey, this is what's going on, here's your ABC. And from there, the council can decide to set their ACL equal to the ABC, or they can buffer it down a little bit because they might not be too sure about the science and the information from the SAC, or maybe the SSC didn't all agree, and maybe there was some contention around it. They might buffer that ACL down a little bit from the ABC that the SSC started. Then they can add an ACT buffer for management uncertainty. Now, this is all done at the Southeast Regional Office. Remember, the Gulf Council doesn't do the numbers. They're not the ones in charge of MREP. They're also not the ones in charge of rulemaking. They're not the ones who have the final say. The Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council is an advisement body, an advisory body to NOAA Fisheries. NOAA Fisheries in our region is run by the Southeast Regional Office, or CERO. This is located right here in downtown St. Pete, Bayboro Harbor, right down in downtown St. Pete. Now, the CERO is in charge of rulemaking. They're the ones who actually make the rules, enforce the rules. They're the ones who tell us if a season's going to close early. They're the ones who close red grouper early based on the quota being met. They do all the rule making. They're in charge. These are the people that hold the reins, if you will. They're also in charge of HMS. NOAA Fisheries is a huge thing. And it's only one branch of NOAA. They also do weather. They do a bunch of other stuff too. They make the IPT, which is the interdisciplinary planning team, and that gets super complicated. We're not really going to dive into that because it's super technical and doesn't really have anything other than they basically help to create the rules. So the Gulf Council is an advisement body. They come up with an advisement or a piece of advice, and they come up with a rule, and then they transmit that rule to NOAA Fisheries, and then NOAA Fisheries creates this IPT, or interdisciplinary planning team, and they are made up of a bunch of different people, and they actually go about how you create the rule, and they write the legalese, they write all the rule-making part of it, and that's what gets submitted to the Commerce Office. Rulemaking typically takes 6 months, sometimes a year. It's a very complicated, slow process. So like what happened with Lane Snapper a few years ago is we got a catch level increase, and they said, Lane Snapper is healthy. We're going to raise the number of fish you can catch. We're going to increase the catch level. Cool. Great. That means we're going to be able to catch more fish. We won't have a Lane Snapper closure at the end of the year. Well, the council passed that, made it final in June. NOAA Fisheries took too long. They didn't get the rule done in time. It wasn't implemented in time. The fishery closed. Even though they were about to increase the catch level a lot based on federal law, MSA dictated when the catch level was projected to be met, they had to close the fishery. Even though the fishery was about to get a catch level increase, because they didn't have the rule done in time, they had to close the fishery. It screwed us because this rulemaking process is very long and very arduous, and there's a lot of bureaucracy involved, and it can take way too long. That's what happened. So it becomes a proposed rule, it goes out for public comment, then it's a final rule. So a lot of people will get these information like, oh, we're going to do this. And I actually got a phone call today. Someone was upset about something happening in the South Atlantic on gag grouper and black grouper, and it's in the public comment process and rulemaking. Once it's in the public comment process and rulemaking, there's nothing you can do. The council has already passed it, finalized it, and submitted it to NOAA. This is really just, if you submit a public comment during this period and rulemaking, NOAA just sends you back an email explaining why they're doing what they're going to do, and they don't really listen to you. Once it's made it to this process, you're pretty much up a creek without a paddle. Even though there is public comment, and you can comment on the rules, but there's really not much you can do at this point. You got to get involved before the council passes it and submits it to NOAA. That's where you have a lot of public input ability and a lot of ways to change the rules, or at least guide the rules in the way you think are best. That's at the council level. Once it gets to NOAA, pretty much not much you can do. NOAA is this black box, not as transparent and open. They say they are, and they will answer your phone calls, and there's some really good people that work there, but for the most part, once it gets there, you're screwed. They're going to do what they want. And that's what happened with our Seafire program. We had a really good program. It passed the council. Once it went to the IPT and got into rulemaking, they started adding all this stuff, the economic information. They made it way more complicated. The lawyers got involved. The law enforcement got involved, and they overcomplicated it and did a really, really fumbled job in the outreach, and it created the program a lot of contention in the program. A lot of people hated the way it rolled out. There was a lot of confusion. Even someone like myself who goes to all these meetings, who tries to stay informed, I was confused, and they were just throwing stuff in there and making it way more difficult than it had to be. And that's what made a lot of people upset and ended up getting the thing sued and lost it. So really, really frustrating sometimes how slow the rulemaking process can be, and how they can kind of throw things in there in the black box of NOAA rulemaking. So that's how NOAA and that process works. So a lot of what people get upset about in the process is stuff that happens at NOAA that's dictated by the federal law. So let's get into the Gulf Council process. This will be our last little piece. Then we'll do our free giveaway of our 39-hour trip. We'll wrap this thing up. I got to get a flight tomorrow at 4 in the morning to New Orleans for a whole week of this fun stuff. So let's pop over to a high level of how you can get involved and how the fishery management process works. So we talked about the science. We talked about the stock assessments. We talked about the CDAR process, the SSC, the bridge from science to management. We talked about the Southeast Regional Office and how NOAA handles the numbers and makes the rules. Now we're going to talk about the Fishery Management Council process. This is the council process. This is the Gulf Council. They don't handle the numbers. All they do is advise NOAA. So let's talk about how that works. So the regional management councils are what advise NOAA. There's 8 regional management council process, or 8 regional management councils: New England, and then Mid-Atlantic, South Atlantic, Caribbean, Gulf. You have the Pacific, the West Pacific, and the North Pacific. Those are the 8 regional councils. They were enacted in 1976 by MSA. In the Gulf, there is 17 voting members on the Gulf Council, 5 state agency members, 11 obligatory or at-large members, which are appointed by the state governors and ultimately approved by NOAA and the Secretary of Commerce, and 1 person from NOAA Fisheries, which is the Southeast Regional Administrator, Andy Strelchek. The Gulf Council member appointments: the obligatory and at-large members, again, are nominated by the state's governor and appointed by the Secretary of Commerce. Members, the Gulf Council members, serve 3 consecutive, or can serve 3 consecutive 3-year terms. So up to 9 years if they get reappointed twice. Remember, there's 5 state reps that are put on there on the Gulf Council, 1 person from NOAA. So each state gets 1 person. There's 1 person from NOAA. Then there's 11 obligatory or at-large seats. Florida has 3 of them. So technically with our state rep and the 3 obligatory seats, we have 4 people at the table, at the Gulf Council table. Now, a lot of people say, oh, the Gulf Council is all commercial. Well, out of the 11 obligatory seats at the council table, 1 is a commercial representative, 2 are charter representatives. So, again, that's 3 people. So if you do the math, there is 8 private recreational representatives on the council right now. So the council is very dominant private recreational. So when people say, follow the money, it's all the commercial fishermen ruining the fishery, technically, the council is made up of private recreational anglers, predominantly. 8 of 17 voting members are private recreational. They have a majority. The role of the council members is to protect public interests by balancing competing interests in the fisheries and to make decisions for the greatest overall benefit to the nation. That's what they're supposed to do. The role of the council is to act as an advisory body. We talked about that already. The South Atlantic Fishery Management Council, who cares about that? Just kidding. Somebody does, but we're talking about the Gulf tonight. The Gulf Council, they handle from north of the Keys all the way to Brownsville, Texas. This whole area is all managed by the Gulf Council. From 9 to 200 miles off Texas and West Florida, and from 3 to 200 miles off Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. But 9 to 200 miles for reef fish. They manage a bunch of different FMPs or fishery management plans. They manage fish habitat, reef fish, shrimp, red drum, coral, spiny lobster, and coastal migratory pelagics. They don't manage water quality. They don't manage sharks. They don't manage highly migratory species or turtles or marine mammals. So all this stuff are not managed. So when you talk about the shark problem in the Gulf, it's not the council. The dolphin problem in the Gulf, overpopulation of charismatic megafauna, not the Gulf Council's thing. They don't handle water quality either. So hugely public input. So you can go there, you can be involved in the process. There's multiple different ways you can get involved through council meetings, scoping meetings or workshops, public hearings, and written comments. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit. Public comment, you can go to the meeting and show up and give public comment. This is Bobby Kelly from Orange Beach, Alabama. He's a goofball. He showed up in a shark suit talking about how the sharks are killing his fleet, even though they don't manage sharks. But he still showed up in a shark suit. It happened. I was there. Stock assessments can trigger regulatory action. So that CDAR process, this is fisheries independent science. They might see something, a trend, and that stock assessment might say a fishery is overfished or undergoing overfishing, and that's going to trigger management action because of MSA. Even if the council is like, hey, this fishery is good, we don't think there's a problem, MSA dictates they have to take action. So MSA can sometimes screw up the process and make the council do things they might not want to do. The council advisory bodies can bring issues to the council too. So there's area closures, data reporting changes. So a person can go to a council meeting and bring some questions up or ask for something, and the council can decide to start a whole new amendment or plan amendment or look into something based on public comment. They gather input from scientists, stakeholders, and develop fishery management plans through stock assessments. And they change regulations based on advice to NOAA. And those fishery management plans are a range of actions with a series of management alternatives. So a lot of times they'll be, this is what we're going to do, these are our different alternatives, and this is the way we're going to go about doing it. So the outline of the fishery management plan is pretty complicated, but basically a fishery management plan is basically the overarching rule on how a fishery is managed. There's a lot of challenges in the process. Developing and deciding fisheries regulations is not easy. It's not straightforward. There's a lot of conflict of stakeholder groups, environmentalists, fishermen, recreational, commercial, all these different stakeholder groups make the process a little contentious at times. Decisions have to be made, even though Some of this stuff is really contentious because MSA dictates something has to be done. So there's a lot of conflict and disclosures that have to, discourse that has to happen. So it doesn't go smoothly all the time. It's going to be pretty rocky and sometimes colorful. Like this week will be pretty interesting with this gag grouper problem. So it is surprising that things actually do get done, but it takes a long time because of all the different discourse and contention sometimes. So that is what an overview, high-level overview of the council process is. And now the big question is, how do you get involved? How can you help? How can you provide some information, right? So let's go over that real quick and talk about how you guys can get involved in the process. So best way to get involved in the process is monitor the council website or listen to videos like this. We do daily updates. We let you know what's coming up. And the council website is how I monitor what's coming up and look at meetings coming up. And you can attend those meetings virtually and through webinars. NOAA Fisheries website, the CDAR website, all these different websites you can monitor, and it lets you know what meetings are coming up. But the easiest thing to do is to sign up for the email notices, which the council website and the NOAA website and the CDAR website has email signups. You can sign up for their emails, and then they're going to keep you up to date through your email inbox of what's coming up. They also all have Facebook pages, Instagrams, Twitters, YouTubes. You can follow that and keep up to date that way as well. Then there's a ton of different meetings, and they have to publicly notice their meetings. It's federal law. They have to tell you when meetings are coming up. They have to give you 30-day notice. I actually have Federal Register notices set up for my email. So they have to publicly notice a meeting. They have to publicly notice a regulation change. So I get an email when they think they're going to change something or when they think they're going to set a meeting. I get emails because the Federal Public Register, you can sign up for that if you'd like. But the Captain Dylan Hubbard page on our Facebook is a great way to stay informed as well, because I don't always post everything fishery management stuff-wise on the Hubbard's Marina Facebook page. I kind of keep that a little bit more happy and focused on advertising in a way, whereas the Captain Dylan Hubbard Facebook page, I get a little bit more in depth. So I recommend following the Captain Dylan Hubbard Facebook page as well. Josh just dropped the link in the Facebook chat. Also, the council website has a ton of resources. So go to golfcouncil.org and check out the calendar page, check out some of the science pages. The Fishery Management Council members, there are just normal people. Some of them very fishy, very cool people. Others are more science, more state people, but they're all really nice, just normal people that are there trying to do their best for the fishery. And they get a lot of bad rap often. Like Andy here is the regional administrator. He's in charge of the entire Southeast region for NOAA Fisheries. He's trying to come on our show. He's tried to come on twice now, and I've had to reschedule on him, unfortunately. But hopefully we're going to get him scheduled to join me here in studio for a meeting. Again, he's in charge of the entire Southeast region. He's a really, really intelligent dude, and he has a very difficult job running the Southeast region of NOAA Fisheries. But you can get involved easily by learning the facts, watching videos like this, building relationships, getting to know someone like myself who can help keep you informed, or someone involved in the process. You can attend meetings virtually if you want. You can show up in person if you want, or just stay informed through your emails, and then make informed comments. Now, there's a multitude of ways to comment. Again, you can show up to this meeting this week and comment in person. You can attend the webinar and comment virtually. Right on the website homepage, golfcouncil.org, right on the homepage, there's a public comment feature where they accept general comments. So you can go there, or you can email them, golfcouncil@golfcouncil.org. Again, golfcouncil@golfcouncil.org. You can email them comments. So you can email comments, and give comments on the website, or you can show up to a meeting either virtually or in person and give comments in person. You can serve. You can serve on one of the advisory panels. They often have advisory panels open, and they advertise those advisory panels through their Facebook page, through their emails, and also on their website as well. Or you can join a group like the Florida Guides Association, and we can help keep you informed as well. Or Coastal Conservation Association. There's a bunch of them out there, but Florida Guides Association is pretty legit. There's lots of opportunities for public comment, making effective comments. In order to make an effective comment, you want to be prepared. You want to have a little bit of information. You want to make a few bullet points. You want to introduce yourself, who you are, where you fish, and a little bit about your involvement. So if you're sitting there thinking about making a comment this week at the Golf Council meeting, you would say, my name is John Smith. I'm from Central West Florida. I fish on charter boats and party boats, and I have a problem with the gag grouper because I think some of these numbers are a little too high. It's a little asinine. We're managing the fishery based on 32 intercepts and such a small sample size that's skewing the data. You guys really need to look at some other opportunities and alternatives to help us have better access to this gag grouper fishery, which is a lot healthier. We're working on a terminal year of data 2019. We need a new stock assessment. We needed better data collection program. We need large sample sizes with more temporal coverage. Thank you for your time. Boom. That is a prepared comment. You've introduced yourself. You've focused on your comments, and you've given some options and some pass forward. You've told them what you want to see and how you want to see it. That was concise, and you've offered some recommendations and solutions, and it was nice, somewhat nice. So these are some good tips on how to make a good comment. You can serve on advisory panels, on different workshops. As a council member, you can serve as well. There's a lot of different groups you can join. Florida Guides Association logo isn't on this page. I'll have to talk to them about that. And then you can stay informed. There's a lot of good ways to stay informed. This is Emily Muhlstein, this woman right here in the blonde in the top. She is the Public Information Officer for the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council. I could call her right now, and she would answer. She and I talk a lot. She's a good friend of mine, and she helps me stay informed. When I have questions, I call her, and she can help point me to the right person. If she doesn't know herself, she says, hey, call this person. They can help you. So getting involved means building relationships. Talking to someone like Emily who knows everyone, she can connect you with people. So as you build your network, then you can be more effective and better engaged in the process. So get to know people, build your network. You can always call me, and I can help start you in the right process. And you could call me. I can give you Emily's contact. She can give you the contact of someone who can help you out better. So build your network. Get informed and get involved. Sign up for the text alerts. You can sign up for the emails. You can join a group. Oh, look, that's a Hubbard's Marina trip right there. A lot of our photos in this, as you can see. Oh, there's Hubbard's Marina as well. That's Florida Fisherman, Jacques Remy. You can sign up for NOAA Fisheries and text alerts. You can. There's a bunch of different things. But here's some good information right here. These two, you might want to screenshot this. I'll pause for a second so you can screenshot this or write this down. Emily Muhlstein in the middle there is our Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council Public Information Officer. I call her, text her, email her quite a bit. Sean Meehan, bottom there, is NOAA Fisheries Public Information Officer. He's the rec fishing coordinator for the Southeast. So he's in charge of all things recreational fishery for the entire Southeast. I call and email and bother him quite a bit. Kim Iverson, the top there, I don't really talk to her as much because she is South Atlantic, but anything South Atlantic, I call her, and she can point me out to the right people. So screenshot that, write it down. You notice Emily has her cell phone number there. You can call her, text her. It's amazing. I don't recommend doing that at night. She probably won't answer you until she gets to know you. Once she gets to know you, she works all the time, and she'll answer you even at night. But don't do that right now, please. And don't tell her I told you to either. But hopefully you guys enjoyed that very quick, high-level overview of fishery science and management, how you can get involved. Hopefully we'll see you this week at the Gulf Council meeting virtually or in person. You can show up with me. We can sit together in New Orleans at the Hyatt Centric. But real quick, I want to show you one last thing. The Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council website page is an important resource that you guys should be very, very familiar with. And this is something I check all the time. Right on their website, if you go to golfcouncil.org, this is their homepage of their website, you can see the council calendar. The council calendar is going to show you what's coming up. So you know this week coming up is the council meeting. So you click on one of the days with the blue dots. It's going to tell you what's going on, and you can click on it, and it's going to bring you to the agenda. And you can look at the agenda. You can see where the meeting's at. You can register for the webinar. You can look at the agenda, and all the agenda has links. So let's say they're talking about something you're interested in. Let's scroll down to Tuesday, and let's say Tuesday afternoon they're going to talk about the Reef Fish Committee. They're going to talk about this red grouper and gag grouper recreational landings. You can actually click on that. Everything's linked. So you can click on it, and it's going to bring up the background information. So these agendas are full of these slides and presentations, full of information. And everything since 1988 is on their website. So there is literally, you could spend years on their website going through different information and getting so much. It's really, really cool. The Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council meetings happen 5 times a year, basically every other month. Every other month they happen across all 5 Gulf states. So there's one in Florida, there's one in Alabama, there's one in Mississippi, there's one in Louisiana, there's one in Texas. They jump around the Gulf to trying to give everybody a chance to join. But you can attend virtually. So you can attend in person or virtually as well. Hopefully you guys enjoyed all the information. Hopefully we'll see you next week. We will not have a show. I unfortunately had something come up with family. Had a death in the family, so we will not be having the show next week. So we will take 1 week off, but hopefully you enjoyed tonight's show, and hopefully I helped you navigate the process a little bit more. A little different than a normal show. Didn't really answer any questions, but hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully we'll see you again for the live stream show. It's every Sunday night at 7:30 p.m. except for next week, and we'll resume again soon. So thanks for watching. Let's find out who won our 39-hour trip for one lucky winner, and we'll see you again, not next week, the week after. Oops, hit the wrong button. Oh, it didn't even work, so that works. Josh, who won our 39-hour trip? Let's see, lucky winner is Stephanie Lockhart from Las Vegas. Congratulations, Stephanie. You got 5 minutes or less to text us your full home address. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. Hopefully you guys got some good information. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot us a text message. I will be on an airplane most of the day tomorrow, but I'll try to answer your questions once I'm in the meeting room. Y'all have a good night, tight lines, and don't forget, if you're too busy to go fishing, you're just too darn busy. Thanks for watching, y'all.